Cape Fear has just released its final episode and brought the series to a close, and following a massive cliffhanger last week with Anna jumping into the lake to avoid Max Cady, this episode looked to answer the question on who killed Max's wife Melissa, if it was actually him, if the Bowden family were gonna survive, and if Max was gonna get sent back to prison. Well, in this video, I'll be answering those very questions, comparing it to the movie, and I'll also share what I thought of it. Here is Cape Fear Episode 10, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Who killed Melissa? One of the biggest questions within this series was centered around if Max Cady was actually responsible for the death of his wife, and, well, it turned out that he actually wasn't. Even though Max was a monster and a ruthless killer, that all happened post him being in prison. The environment that he was in ultimately transformed him into a killer and quite literally broke him due to the people that he was around and his need to survive in there. With it being teased to us that Luke was Max Cady's son with his sister Crystal, when Anna revealed that to him, he laughed it off because he knew that Crystal wasn't able to have children after she had a car accident. This is where Anna then realized that Luke was actually Melissa's child that was believed to have died along with her when she was murdered. As we know, Crystal was obsessed with her brother Max, but he wanted nothing to do with her. She tormented him throughout their childhood, and she became jealous when it seemed like he had something good going for himself and the prospect of a family of his own. This is what gave Crystal the motive to go out and kill Melissa. Crystal didn't want Melissa to take Max away from her, so the only way that she could prevent that was by killing her herself. When she did, she ripped the baby from her, which is where Luke got that scar from, and she raised him as her own, claiming that she had a home birth that was unsupervised, when in reality, it wasn't even hers, it was Melissa's. This provided a dark moment for Max Cady because, as we saw throughout the entirety of the show, all he wanted was to be with Melissa and his son, and during the beginning of the episode, Max quite literally turned to Luke and said, "Who are you?" and then proceeded to kill him along with his sister and his father. So Max's evil nature that he adopted was the very thing that prevented him from being able to have a life with his son after he found out the truth. As well as that though, as we saw, Max potentially had two other children in Nevaeh and Natalie, but he didn't actually want anything to do with them. He only wanted the child that he would have had with Melissa, so he let all of his children down in the end, just like how his father let him down. The ending explained. When it came to the ending of Cape Fear, we saw that after Max had killed his sister, his son, and his father after he put him in the cage that he was always kept in, Anna revealed the truth at Max's restaurant's grand opening about how he coerced Amy to end things for herself and to write the note admitting to killing Melissa. As well as that, she also played the recording that Natalie took of her conversation with Nevaeh, where Nevaeh admitted to being put up to all of the tasks of tormenting the family by Max. Once this was done, his reputation was ruined, and after being arrested after attacking Anna in public, he eventually managed to evade the police. This was where the show differed from the movie slightly. Instead of the final showdown being on a boat in the lake, we still had the hurricane and the terrible weather, but it was more of a home invasion style, which was executed pretty well. Max broke into the Bowden's home and one by one tied up the family and put them on trial, which felt quite poetic, seeing as though he felt like him being sent away and the family profiting off his pain, suffering and misery was what led them to have their privilege. It was in this section where we found out that Anna actually conspired to get Max put away, despite the fact that there wasn't enough evidence to highlight that Max was guilty of killing Melissa. She was afraid of Max, and with her carrying what could have been Max's child, Natalie, if he was her father, she didn't want Natalie to know that her father was a monster. The sad reality of it is that Max was actually a victim to the system and injustices being carried out on him. Anna wasn't a good person at her core, and she did profit off of deliberately getting Max sent down to prison for something that he didn't do. It was the system and the people inside of it that changed Max into the violent killer that we knew him as in the present day when he came out, and also the pent-up resentment that he had towards his family and the way that he was treated when he was younger. When you think about it, all he wanted in life was to have the very thing that he didn't have, a family that cared for one another, and that was cruelly taken away from him by somebody that had tormented him his entire life, his sister. When Natalie managed to escape the cable ties after the family were being held at gunpoint, chaos broke out, and as the family broke free, we saw Tom and Anna in the pool holding Max down, with it looking like they were going to kill him and be rid of him for good. However, with Natalie shouting "kill him" to her parents, that was where Anna realized that she couldn't become the monster that was in front of her, and she didn't want her children to think that what they were doing was the right thing. So instead, they allowed him to come up, catch his breath, and be taken away by the authorities. The final thing that we saw in the episode was a family barbecue. Just like the opening of the first episode, Natalie hid the envelope of the results of her paternity test that she did to see if Max Cady was her father, but she never opened them, with her going down and saying to Tom, "Do you need any help, Dad?" That all but confirmed that she viewed Tom as her father regardless, whether they were biologically related or not. The closing shot of the series then had Anna being sat down, but she seemed wary of something that could have been watching her in the distance. I, however, don't think that it's Max Cady, as he was probably most comfortably behind bars by then. I instead think it's more so leaning into the fact that what the family went through is something that they're not just going to simply be able to get over, and that the effects of it will live long with them for a while. The family were back together and safe, for now, but what damage had it done internally? Were the relationships fractured, and could they just move on? Only time would tell. My review of the series. Overall, I thought Cape Fear was an okay series to follow. I don't think it was incredible, and it definitely lost some steam at around the halfway point, but in the build-up towards the finale, it found some momentum again, and the mystery of if Max Cady killed the woman that he loved was put back at the forefront, and that's what I liked. I thought the opening scene to this episode was one of the best in the entire season. It was so dark. There was a sinister edge to Max Cady that we always felt was behind his eyes, and we saw it unfold as he slayed his entire family on the boat. As well as that, the chaotic, manic nature that he had when he was inside of the Bowden's home was something that also came right through the screen. Javier Bardem and Patrick Wilson were the strongest performers in this series by far for me. Amy Adams frustrated me quite a lot with her stale performance and lack of emotional range, and I found Natalie and Zach to just make ridiculous decisions time and time again, so I didn't really care for them. However, the rivalry between Tormentor and Tormented was something that became addicting to watch. The score throughout this series was also something that captivated me. The late 80s and early 90s music accompaniment really reminded me of the movie, and from a stylistic point of view, it paid homage in a nice way. I also thought the boat scene paid homage to the movie quite nicely too. I did feel like there were some ridiculous moments in the climax of the show though, with Cady just standing on the roof in the middle of a hurricane, and also when he jumped down through the window at Zach and came into the house. It didn't even feel like it was paying tribute to the 90s, it felt more 60s in approach. It was an interesting choice to make, and whilst it did take me out of it, I just kinda tried to look at it at face value. I'd say the final 2 episodes were definitely my favourites in the series. I wish the family were a bit more likeable, but I suppose that's kind of the point, right? Anna wasn't a very nice person, and she contributed to sending her own client down when she should have been defending him, and also when he was innocent, so it makes sense as to why she was quite cold. Like Apple TV normally do, they put out a great show that was engaging, had me hooked, was visually stunning, and had some real solid performances. I'm glad I watched it because it definitely had a similar vibe to the 90s movie, but it was also able to forge its own identity in the process, so I respect that. So, there you have it, Cape Fear Episode 10, Ending Explained.